This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation of an offer to buy or sell securities. SNN.Network and Maj Soueidan are not licensed brokers, broker-dealers, market makers, investment bankers, investment advisors, analysts, or underwriters. We do not recommend any companies discussed. We may buy, sell, short, cover securities in any company mentioned and may profit in the event those securities rise in value if we are long and fall if we are short. We recommend you consult with a professional investment advisor, broker, or legal counsel before purchasing or selling any securities referenced in this podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to Avoiding the Crowd podcast with your host, Maj Soueidan. I'm not Maj, I'm the producer, Robert Kraft from the SNN.Network, where you can listen to every single episode of Avoiding the Crowd, and you can also listen to it on Maj's website at GeoInvesting.com, where you can get a free 7-day trial to try out his newsletter. And with that, I mean, Maj, we're going back to basics, man. It's just me and you today. What's going on?
Well, thanks for the plug there, buddy.
Of course, dude.
About time.
About time. I did it on a couple episodes before. You know, that one time.
I'm just kidding. No.
Good stuff, man. How you doing though? What's going on?
Good. No, I watched my Steelers get crushed on this week on Sunday. It was a really, really sad night for me. But I knew it was coming. You know, they're not as good as they say. You know, they look and the record actually portrays them to be.
I was joking with you offline that they're the classic pump and dump. All right. Like, you know, they go up, you know, they're kicking it, rocking. And then, you know, when that next financial report comes out, you see that, oh, what? Not profitable. Yeah. Wait, still haven't recognized any revenue.
There's certainly an element of fraud going on there. And I don't know where it's at, but you know, they won a lot of their games last second, you know, struggled against some bad teams and anyways, it's always next week. Hopefully they get it together. Yeah. Well, so how was your weekend?
Well, other than watching the, Giants finally get a primetime game, that look in LA, we're just very thankful whenever we get, at least as a Giants fan, that we get the games on, because I don't have Red Zone or what is it, Sunday Ticket, whatever. So I just, if they show up on a Fox game or a CBS game on at 10 a.m. or 1 o'clock, so it's always a good time, and they were on the 10 a.m. game, but of course they got killed by the Cardinals, and that's great, especially when we actually had a little hope of maybe even making the playoffs. But
all right, no, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually picked them to win. I mean, to win that game.
Really, you did?
Yeah.
The odds were. I think they were favored. If I remember, yeah, I think they were favored by like 2.5.
It might have been, but sometimes,
Yeah.
Sometimes you need more than good. Sometimes you need more than good odds.
That's for damn sure. Yeah. That's for damn sure. All right, Maj, let's cut to the chase. I mean, as I said, this is our first time back, just me and you together. But I know, talking offline, especially with where we're at today, this idea, that we're certainly not out of the woods with COVID, but with vaccines and everything like that, there's a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel here. So I thought this would be an interesting time to talk about a case study that you've talked about, with your membership that's been profiled on GeoInvesting. So you want to take it away from there?
Yeah. So well, thanks, Bobby. And obviously, we don't keep talking about COVID all the time, right? But I thought it'd be interesting now because we're, the vaccine's on the way, and I think there's a relevant case study to talk about, which kind of really continues to, impress on the point that we always love to talk about. There are quality nanocaps and microcaps out there, and real companies with real revenue. And if you look hard enough, you can find them. And the stock here, the symbol is RVP. It's a stock we've been following for a few years. I mean, maybe 2-3 years, but kind of sitting there on the radar. And we really never pulled the trigger until earlier this year. And this was not a COVID play, by the way. It was just I'm going to get into why we bought it. Now the stock, the name of the company is called Retractable Technologies. And they just basically make safety syringes. And it was a pretty cool little gadget. So, I call it a gadget, but it's a syringe where you press a button and the needle retracts into a syringe or encasement. And the purpose of their their product is to prevent needle stick injuries, which, look, I didn't realize how big of a problem it was when I first came across it, but it's a really big a problem. I think maybe worldwide, over $1 billion problem. And it's basically, needle stick injuries occur when physicians or nurses might, or anyone handling a needle, whether it's from the physician, a nurse, or to cleanup. And so there's been a big push to really, over the years, to even government initiatives to encourage the medical ministry really to address that situation and reduce the needle stick injuries. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing they had. And it was, you literally just push a button and the needle pops right back into the encasement, as opposed to the usual way of doing, disposing of a needle and taking out the skin, and how you have to use your hands, and how a nurse does that, right? And they got to pull it out, and there's different ways of approaching needle stick safety, and I thought theirs was like a high tech way of doing it. But there was an issue though with the company where they were really in a going through a multi-year lawsuit, a legal battle with Becton Dickinson. And when you look at the company's revenues over the years, they really didn't gain that much traction. I was wondering why, which is a great product. If I look at the company's revenue here, let me pull it up. They're hitting that in that 20 to 30 million revenue range for some time. Really never able to get back, through that. Now, Becton Dickinson trades with the symbol BDX, which I don't own, by the way. I do own RVP. Is the market share leader in this industry. And basically what was going on was, from RVP's point of view, and where the lawsuit was all about, was they believed that BDX was utilizing unfair marketing practices to make it harder for RVP to gain market share. And of course, BDX was, fought that and denied that. And basically what's going on was, when you sell these, a lot of the revenue or a sales process goes through GPOs, group purchasing organizations, and these GPOs will then introduce product to healthcare organizations, for example, hospitals, in RVP's case, for example. And so that RVP was alleging that BDX was really spreading bad rumors to the GPOs about the effectiveness of RVP's product and related kind of negative kind of marketing tactics. And what turned out to happen there, Bobby, was that they did win some money, and they did win some cases early on, and but apparently BDX still didn't stop doing their thing. And this goes back several years. And so RVP continued to sue BDX, and in 2019, I guess there was a final judgment finally on the last attempt of RVP to continue to sue BDX, and the judge actually ruled in favor of RVP. And the stock at that time, I think, was sitting around, this is last year, 19 sometime, I think before August or before the summer, maybe around 70 cents, maybe 60 cents, 80 cents, was approaching $1, on potential hopes that RVP was going to win this case and win a boatload of money, millions of dollars, which they had won in the past. And I should say, by the way, too, there was a lot of insider buying going on by the CEO this whole time. All throughout the years, he's been buying consistently. And it turned out, the court spent, RVP won that case, or they were correct in what BDX was doing, but they didn't award any judgment. So that was a weird thing, right? Where they basically gave them they said, you're right, but we're not awarding any money. Really never got into why that why that was the case. But the stock fell pretty hard, which we thought was really weird because, I mean, of course, maybe they're not going to win any money, but they still won the case. And there were some settlement kind of agreements between RVP and Beck and Dixon. And what we thought this was encouraging, where if BDX now, if they were going to lay off the gas now in terms of deceptive marketing practices, that the company would finally be able to go out there and start really getting some market share. And so we started watching the story, and then the stock, and I think we talked about the story somewhat to GeoInvesting members that we were watching, and we really didn't take a position in it yet. And then the stock eventually went over $1 and was sitting about 140, 150. They reported a couple of nice quarters of growth. So we surmised, all right, maybe they are starting to gain a little bit of market share from BDX laying off the pedal. So, they were, generating revenue, showing some growth, which we became optimistic in terms of, well, maybe BDX is laying off the pedal, and maybe they're not being deceptive anymore. And then they were also had reached profitability, consistent profitability for a couple quarters in a row. And so we decided, and the stock went over $1. We decided to buy a little stock, not too much. And we told our members, hey, we're taking a really small position as we continue to watch the story unfold. That was pretty interesting here. Around that time, I had not written an article on the company yet. And I said, maybe it's time to do that, to at least to start really, really digging into the story. And we did to do a really deep dive in the industry, the competitors, some of the risks associated with the company, how big is this needle stick problem? How big really is it? And what are all the other potential solutions out there? And I actually reached out to Thomas Burney and Andrew Vermeer, and they're GeoInvesting members. And I said, why don't you help? Maybe you guys can help me write an article here and help us do some research. So we all collaborated together and did some research and wrote a pretty comprehensive report on RVP. And it really started making sense to me that this product does look like it is best in class. And I interviewed some nurses and the one thing that worried me was that sometimes it's hard to teach or convince old people. If you're used to doing something for a long time, even though it might be inferior, to want to use new technology. And that was the one thing I had a little bit of an issue with potentially. But other than that, it was clear by watching. I watched probably 20, 30 videos on different types of syringes. I had to do that because management wasn't getting back to me. I wanted to interview the CEO, but he really wasn't doing that, getting back to me at all. Maybe he was jaded with the market, how the market treated the stock over the years and the whole process, how his stock maybe fell apart when the whole BDX thing kind of blew up. But I was real confident in the research. And then, of course, COVID comes along. And we thought, all right, this is pretty interesting. I mean, is there going to be an interesting opportunity for RVP to maybe be a player in this at some point, if there is ever going to be a vaccine? And RVP had this contract for a while with the government. They're called IDIQ contracts. And I think it's indefinite time, indefinite quantity contracts. So what this is, the government will issue these things like as a vehicle. Say, okay, we'll issue you, let's say a $50 million contract, $80 million contract, potential contract, or IDIQ. You just got to go find the money to fund this contract, or there has to be maybe a task order on that contract given. So it doesn't mean that this contract is going to be executed. It just means it's there if we want to use it. And it was just sitting there. I think it was there for, over 5 years, maybe longer than that. And no revenue was ever no task orders were ever delivered against that contract. And then we noticed, I don't know if it was March or maybe April, that there was every year, I believe it's every year, the IDIQ contract is kind of amended. Just a procedural thing, that is still in play. And you can go to a government website to see these things. And we noticed that there was an update in early 2020 where there was, it was mentioned, they mentioned the word COVID or something, like I forgot the exact word, but it was like, basically adding COVID-19 to this procedural kind of, contract, whatever, or this IDIQ. The stock pumped a little bit and they came back down. And I think there was this belief that this IDIQ has been out there forever and nothing's going to happen with it. We thought differently. And so we started taking a bigger position in the stock, and we kind of communicated that to our members that we're doing that, even though everyone I was talking to, or I won't say everyone, but no one really was believing that RVP was going to ever, benefit from this at all. Well, then lo and behold, a few weeks later, they put out a press release talking more about the opportunity and what this contract was and everything. And it started to become more obvious that RVP was going to play a big role in administrating vaccines at some point, and that the government was going to be, funding this. And so, stock had a nice little huge run. After that, it went from, I think, $1.50, and it got as high as, I want to say, $13 relatively quickly. It had this really big run. And I want to say that, let me look at the chart here real quick, Bobby, because I want to see where that was, because it's important here to get this right on that when the high was achieved. And it got ahead of itself because, there was this, here it is. Actually, it got as high, I think, $13.10 on July 30th. And then it had a massive pullback. The company reported earnings, I believe that would have been what, probably Q2 earnings shortly after that. And the revenues they were okay, but they weren't fantastic. They didn't have, there was no really, I guess for some reason, the market had expected, RVP or the government to already order these, syringes ahead of even the vaccine being available, right? Or even maybe there was just a general needle shortage a syringe shortage going on anyway right now, even before the vaccine, because you still need these needles and syringes to combat COVID-19, even during COVID-19, before the vaccine. But there were really no orders from that. So the stock fell pretty hard to as low as, I think, got into the fives. Let me see here. Yeah, 557. Now we had, on that first run to 13, we had sold some of that stock because we knew that, we assumed that the investors were worrying, that there wasn't going to be a lot of revenue from the government contract yet. And we communicated that to our GeoInvesting members that we sold some. But we kept a good chunk of it too, so it hurt when it came back down. And then, we held on to our position. And this is all about like InfoArb too. A lot of InfoArb going on here. You had this little IDIQ contract. You had the COVID-19 thing buried in a updated part of the contract. And then, and if you start reading some of the filings, you started seeing that the government was actually going to basically start investing in the company to help them expand their manufacturing capacity. So they were putting money, basically helping fund RVP. And I believe there might have been actually maybe increase in the contract size at 1.2 earlier this year. So then you had, well, the cool thing though was InfoArb came along maybe a month or so ago, where there were some meeting minutes that we came across through an investor in our network who was some town hall meeting minutes regarding zoning approval and zoning because they were building. They're in Texas, by the way. So they, you got to go to these zoning meetings to talk about your expansion plans. And during the minutes, or at the transcript, you could get the transcript of that meeting. You were able to see some really interesting InfoArb in that meeting, which kind of basically talked about the size, the amount of revenue that could be coming to RVP's way, how the government was really backing them in this whole initiative. Then when you read the filings, we saw more information about it. So it became really, 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 really bullish again. And I think the stock ran again here. That's sitting today around $13 again, isn't it? I think it's come back nicely. I actually played some options in the stock too. It was really great. I mean, we didn't disclose our option play to the Geo. We don't do options that much in Geo, but it was a really interesting option trade too. I think the options went from like 35 cents to to maybe like $8-9, which was a crazy trade on the options. Yeah, so that's that. An interest. So this was a really interesting thing, and then they finally had their third quarter earnings, which eventually showed the really big numbers. And the stock had a delayed reaction too. It didn't react quickly those earnings as we thought it would. So it was time to get even. There was time to get in the stock, even after Q3 numbers were released. You could have rode that nice little run. So it got to 13 again, pulled back, and now it's come back up again. So it's had 3 runs at 13 now. And I guess there was a tweet out there today we saw where there was someone talking about seeing the syringes at a CVS or a Walgreens. I forgot which one it was, but they're definitely being used there to administer the vaccine. So that's this is a really, the reason I want to talk about this is because it really goes to show that how there's real companies in these nanocap, microcap arena. The company's revenues. Let me look at this is. So they were doing about $30 million of revenue before leading into 2020. They did 41 million revenue in 2019, 33 million in 2018. This is a real company. They just did a $27 million quarter in the third quarter, which was a lot of that was from a good deal of that was from government revenue in preparation for the vaccine. So now that's the challenge. Now it's going to talk about these challenges too. Now though, so the challenge here is how do you value RVP? You have this legacy business. It's still growing. It's growing maybe 10-15%, which isn't fantastic, but we're hoping that as they gain market share through the core business, that maybe that gets better, and as a BDX maybe lays off with unfair marketing practices. But then you have the hype on the story is obviously the COVID-19 revenue, and there's a lot of we don't know much about how long the vaccine is going to last. How recurring will the revenue be? Obviously, if this is a vaccine, it has to be done every year, every 2 years. So it's hard to model that revenue right now, but there certainly is going to be a level of revenue that's going to come from COVID-19 that's going to stick probably for some time. But we don't necessarily know how the market's going to value that revenue yet. And that's what we're trying to figure out right now. And that's the challenge in a lot of COVID-19 stocks. You don't know how much of the business that you're getting from COVID-19 is going to stick around, and how much is going to go, just disappear one day. But if we're going to be taking vaccines for years to come, some of that revenue is going to stick, and maybe help the company, with its give it nice cash flow, maybe to help it become more aggressive in its core business and get that stuff and that growth going and accelerating. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's definitely richly valued here. I think it's let me see what it's selling at here. Yeah, it's selling at a price of sales right now on trailing of six times revenue, which isn't terrible. But is it fair to really value the COVID-19 revenue at that multiple? I guess is the question, and that's what we're playing around with right now. If you were just to value the core business, that revenue, it's pretty fairly valued here, maybe even rich. And that's why investing is hard, right? And that's what we're going through now. But look, the cool thing about this is that we took a pretty big position when it was only around $1.50 or so. We sold a lot of our profits, made some money in the options, which gives us the ability to stick around with a smaller position to see what happens, and to hold some for the longer term. And still, even if the stock falls back to 5 or 3 or 4, we still did, made a lot of money in the stock. So and that's what we're at right now. So that's that, Bobby.
All right, that's that. I mean,
putting me on the spot.
Yeah, no, this is definitely an on the spot case study today. That's for sure. Yeah. But
you're never gonna get a clean presentation from me, man. It's never gonna be clean. So stop.
I think that's what people can expect on this show. Like look, day of recording. I think it's pretty clear to everyone. We come up with it on the spot. You know what's most interesting. But I mean, your quick last take on this. And for full disclosure, I'm not a shareholder of RVP. How did you find this idea? Did the community pitch it to you, or were you looking at? I mean, I think you said you took a position back in December, right? So you didn't know COVID-19 was around the corner. I mean, how'd you find this one?
Yeah, I think we took the position actually. I think we took it actually. Hold on, I don't think it was December. The date we took the position was actually March 11th, 2020 is when we actually disclosed along the Geo. We might have had a small position going into it, but we weren't comfortable talking about it because we didn't do enough of our research yet. But we disclosed it around $1.50, March 11th of 2020. I mean, but we found the stock. We were talking about it in 2019 though. That's how as we were doing the research. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we find it? I mean, I gotta, we do. That was probably a Form 4 situation where we track a lot of insider buying, right. And we had noticed through my feed that an internal feed I have here within Geo, a lot of Form 4s being filed for multiple years by the CEO in this company, and then I dug into it a little more, and then I think it might have hit a high too. So we do a lot of momentum research too, where we look for stocks trading at high, hitting new highs for the first time in a long time, to see if there's a reason for that. We had the combination of momentum plus insider buying. We thought that was interesting, and they just opened up a nice little can of worms for us. That was really nice.
For sure. All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to end it. And just real quick, just to make sure it's perfectly clear, you said you still have a small position, right?
Yeah, a smaller position. I mean, it depends on who's small to who.
Small position for you.
I don't want to get in trouble for that. The way we disclosures and stuff like that. But
yeah, small position for Maj. Put it like that. All right. So all right. I think we're good to go. I mean, anything you want to plug in particular going into this week? I know we have a guest for next episode. So anything you want to plug?
No, let's keep that a secret. I think it's going to be a great episode, by the way, next week. So you definitely, if you're watching this, you got to tune into this one. Definitely. It's going to be a good one. Like what we just did right now, I promised our members of GeoInvesting that I was going to go over 45 stocks in our coverage universe and try and do it under 90 seconds for each one. So I ran still working on it. I ran a little trial run on yesterday, and it took me 2 hours. It wasn't good. It was horrible. So I had to delay it. So I'm working on that right now.
You know how you should do? You should do like a set number a day. So you're not like going nuts where you're doing all 44 in one day. You should do like, I don't know, spread out over like 8 days. Just do like 5 a day.
And I wish you would have told me that like on Saturday, Bobby. But you are right. That's what I wanted to see if I could do it, right? Okay. And by the 25th stock, I was already getting dizzy. I was passing out. It was horrible.
That would actually be a really sick game to see if like you could we could try and go for like a record here of like you being able to dissect. Like I'll just throw a list of I'll have like a list of 50 names or something and just throw them at you and just get your like 60-second take on it, and we'll see how many you can actually do in one session.
It was yeah. Well, it'd be interesting. Let me get this down pat first. So I think, but you're right. I'm gonna do probably 5 a day, then like do it because I think that's although doing 44 is in one time is pretty kind of cool. Maybe like to do it and see if I could do it. I don't think I didn't get enough granular detail. I think members will get more out of it if I do 5. Then do 5 more and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So any members listening right now, this is like a little BTS, it's a little behind the scenes of how Maj is producing some of the great content that you guys have come to know and love. So, and we expect a lot more, of course, especially with the podcast and everything. So very good. All right. So everybody should go to geoinvesting.com, go subscribe, listen up, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and keep this. We have a lot of really fun stuff and great content scheduled for Avoid the Crowd podcast for several weeks going forward. And I really hope that everyone's learning from the podcast. If there's anything that we could be doing better, please let us know. If there's any guests that you want to see on the show, let us know so we can learn more strategies and get better at investing.
Maj, I did get one comment is that we need to update your background. We need to get some degrees up there. We need to get a Steelers helmet. I mean, we gotta work with that. I don't know. Well, for those who are listening in, his background is he's got a fan over his right shoulder, I think it's over his right shoulder, and a chair. So we gotta. So at least we can put some let's mess some papers around. Look like you're reading something before we started.
Oh, what's messy in here? You trust me, but
yeah. Good shit.
I'll work on that.
Okay, all right. We're gonna get a nice back, and he's gonna wear a collared shirt every time now. Not as a gray shirt. No, I'm just kidding.
Now you're going too far.
Now we're going too far. All right. All right. Well, with that, Maj, everybody listening, you can listen to every episode of Avoiding the Crowd in multiple places. I invite you to go and check it out at GeoInvesting.com. You can also listen to it on the SNN.Network YouTube channel at youtube.com/SNN Wire, and also on the direct Podbean audio only version, which is avoidingthecrowd.podbean.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Bobby K Craft, BOBBYKKRAFT. And Maj, they can follow you at Maj GeoInvesting on Twitter as well. So I think that's it. Maj, we're good?
Yep, we're good. Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, man. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation of an offer to buy or sell securities. SNN.Network and Maj Soueidan are not licensed brokers, broker-dealers, market makers, investment bankers, investment advisors, analysts, or underwriters. We do not recommend any companies discussed. We may buy, sell, short, cover securities in any company mentioned and may profit in the event those securities rise in value if we are long and fall if we are short. We recommend you consult with a professional investment advisor, broker, or legal counsel before purchasing or selling any securities referenced in this podcast.